Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Call the work session to order.
Well, then let us consider this a due call to order for the workshop, and I'll turn it over to whoever's
Well,
going to introduce these
so I'll
gentlemen.
introduce. As you may recall, last month we added LJ Hart Services to our scope of, I guess, analysis of our different finances, and they've asked, and I've invited them to come present to us some of their analytics, and so this is Larry Hart for LJ Hart, and Larry, I'll let you introduce your team. So, turn the time over to you.
Sure. Got Dr. Wesley Townsend, who just joined in July. He retired from Pleasantville. You might know him. And,
Larry, you might want to use the microphone. I'm not
There's
sure.
a microphone on the
We can-
podium there. It won't get the
Go to the podium.
You're set to go.
Okay. Yeah, I hear it. Brad Wegman is Vice President, CPA. He's been with me 6 years. And our firm was created in November of 1991. We just celebrated our 27th birthday, so to speak. And we're grateful to be here to go over the booklets with you. And in a workshop, it's really best if we have dialogue and participation from any of you with questions that you might have. Our overall theme is that to give you the confidence that you have the ability to do up to $10 million of new debt without raising taxes, depending on if you have the needs for those things. And that's our purpose. One of our purposes is to demonstrate how we've come to that conclusion and make you comfortable with that. We realize that just because you can do it doesn't mean you want to do it, and those type of things. It has been, from our research, it's been since 2007 since you had a bond issue. That's been 12 years. Most schools that we work with throughout the state, I don't know, is that, do we have can we put the map on the screen, or do I
Yes.
just, I'll let you do that, Brad. That's our staff photo. I started with one other person in 1991, and we've grown through the years to this number of staff. They're all bright folks. We have experience with 3 retired superintendents as well, and the staff to serve is our motto, because when you're covering, if you want to switch to the map, since that time we have over 300 school districts throughout the state that work with us pretty much on a continuing basis, and we have many meetings of the type we'll have with you this evening. And it takes a good staff, a large staff, to be responsive. We pride ourselves in the fact that if you call us, you get us. If one of us isn't there, we'll return the call the same day, and that's helped us build a nice reputation. We worked with Mr. Menching on 2 or 3 financings at East Buchanan, and I think he was satisfied with some good savings that came out of that. You can see we've got a number of references, and that's our sort of an introduction to what our firm is. We specialize in public finance, which means we will help our clients determine how to finance some capital projects that they would have in mind. And then often that requires an election. We have developed some strategies to help our clients achieve success with the ballot measures. One of the main ones that works is the no tax increase element. Sometimes we've worked with folks for 2 or 3 years to get them in a position where they could go with the no tax increase. You'll be in that part of what Brad will discuss with you. There'll be a point where, depending on what your timing is, there'll be some activities that you'll need to do such as prepaying of existing bonds in order to preserve your levy, that would be a part of that service that our company provides on a continuing basis. If you want to, you have the booklet. We will some of the items are in the booklet. They're not in the PowerPoint. We'll try to reference the pages that we have, and I'll let Brad go through the. What I'm trying to say is you might want to open the booklets to certain points, and also the PowerPoint will be a graphical demonstration, which will be useful as well. I'll just move over for you.
So in the PowerPoint, it's also in most of the pages of the PowerPoint, we've got the booklet page referenced in the bottom left-hand corner. If you want to go in more detail in the booklet. The first slide on the PowerPoint is the district's assessed value growth calculations. We have them dating all the way back to fiscal year 1989-90, but the first set of calculations is just over the last 5 years, and the district's assessed value growth over that time period has been very healthy, 3.38% over the past 5 years, going back to fiscal year 1996-97 with periodic reassessment, 4.82%, then fiscal year 1989-90, 6.12%. So overall, very, very healthy growth in assessed valuation. One important factor is in all of our projections this evening, we're assuming a growth rate in assessed valuation of just 1% per year. So we can see how that compares to 3.38%. And the reason for that is we're just trying to be very conservative in all of our projections for what we're estimating. That factor that we use in your projections is something that you all control. If you'd want to see how our projections would change if we are less conservative and go from 1 to 2 or 3%, to see how that impacts the balances, we'd be happy to do that. But just as background, 1% in these projections.
With 1%, that's fairly likely you'll achieve that. So when we get too aggressive on those assumptions and growth doesn't come in, as we've just come through a 5-6 year period with the financial crisis, a lot of schools didn't have good growth. Your growth is actually above average on a statewide basis, the 3%. But there probably were some years when you didn't grow in the last 7-8 years. So that's why we're using the 1% to start off with.
Next slide, we have the district's historical adjusted levies by fund over the past 10 years. The total levies remain constant at $5.07, but we'll notice the incidental Fund 1 has decreased from about $4.20 to $4.04, but the district's been proactive in increasing the debt service fund levy from 87 cents up to $1.03. And so in the projections this evening, we're assuming the district maintains that $1.03 debt service fund levy going forward in future years. And so these projections are a no tax increase, as Larry mentioned, utilizing that $1.03 debt service fund levy.
And frequently, maybe even some of you are thinking, well, how can we borrow $10 million without a tax increase? And the term means no increase above the level you're currently paying. It does require an extension of the levy over what it would otherwise be without a new project. But it doesn't require an increase over what you're presently levying. And our experience over the last 5 years with our clients is that the no tax increase measures has been 30 or more each year over that period of time. Some years maybe not quite 30, but 95% of those ballot measures have passed the no tax increase. But it is an extension, and that's carefully pointed out in public forums so that people understand it. But it seems to eliminate a lot of opposition, particularly if the projects make sense to the voters. The fact that you're not asking to raise the levy. When we go to where there is a levy increase, our experience has been about 60 to 70% approval the last 3 or 4 years. sometimes it drops below that, but the average has been 65-70% on all of them. But it's more difficult to do the increase, sometimes even if it's only a dime or 15 cents.
So on this slide, we have the district's balances and debt service account graphed with the payments each year. So the blue bars are the balances in the debt service account after your payment has been made on your outstanding general obligation bonds.
Why don't we go through their existing debt in the booklet,
Okay.
if we can, and then come right back to that slide.
Okay. So in the booklet, just to go recap on the bonds currently outstanding, page 3 and 4 are the Series 2007 bonds. Those bonds were then refinanced by the Series 2014 and 2017 bonds. And as Larry mentioned, those 2007 bonds, which have now been refunded, that was the last major new money project for the district. That was $18,110,000 at that time. So those bonds had a 10-year call feature of March 1st, 2017. And so then on page 5, we have the first refunding, Series 2014 refunding, which refinanced a piece of those, $9,290,000. The principal payments on that 2014 refunding go through 2027 with interest rates of 3% and 5%. Under yield statistics, average coupon in the middle of the page, the third line item down, the average coupon is the average interest rate, 3.387% on that financing. On page 6 is the debt service to maturity and call report for those 2014 refunding bonds. Those bonds have a call feature of March 1st, 2022. So it's an 8-year call feature. So that's when the district would be eligible to start making prepayments on that 2014 bond, March 1st, 22. If we don't go forward with any new bonds, you could start making prepayments at that time. On page 7 is the only other bond issue currently outstanding, the 2017s, which refinanced the other piece of those 2007 bonds, $6,755,000. Similar to those 2014 refunding bonds, the 17 bonds have payments that go through March 1st, 2027, with interest rates of 3% and 5%. Yield statistics, middle of the page, the third line item down, 3.34% is the average interest rate on the 2017 refunding bonds. And then on page 8, we illustrate the call feature on that financing March 1st, 2024 for those bonds. So it's a 7-year call feature on that financing.
So what we're attempting to do here is inform you of what debt you already have, and you can tell from this that you'll be debt free by 2027. But because of the call features on the bonds you have outstanding, we can't really do anything to save money right now. Frankly, the market is such that the new interest rates wouldn't be much more attractive than what you already have. But you are locked in to no call feature until 2022 on one and 2024 on the other. When with our financings, you would have a 5-year call or less on whatever you did, so that you would be able to take advantage of an improved market condition.
Can I
Yeah,
ask
go-
a
of
question?
course.
I apologize. It's been 30-odd years since I had economics in college and
Sure.
or finance, I guess it was. Can you define for me call period and how that works?
Yes, call feature or call period, the technical name is optional redemption provision, and it means you have the right to call or pay off your investors early on those specific dates. Once that date comes, then that call feature is available for any time afterwards. For your school, the fact that we have the 2022, if your fund balances begin getting too large in the debt service account, which Brad will go into in a moment, then you can prepay debt and keep your levy the same to avoid lowering it and then having to raise it if you come back with a bond issue at a later time. So that's a good management. But your call features that exist are not friendly to saving money, but the market won't save any right now anyway. So
And I'm assuming that's because we did do some refinancing
yes,
or restructuring.
and the tax law changed. The most recent change that went into effect December of 17, we can no longer do advance refundings on a tax-exempt basis. And advance refunding is more than 90 days ahead of the call feature. So on your existing bonds, when you get within 90 days of the call, if rates are favorable, then you can do another current refunding and maybe save a little money. But they're very close to being paid off at that point anyway, so it may not be economical. And we haven't assumed any refundings in this analysis. I appreciate your comment.
And I appreciate the refresher.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
been a lot of years.
Now that you sometimes hear puts and calls. A put is when investor can force you to pay them off at a specific time, but that's not common in municipal bonds. It's more common in corporate debt. But we're not talking about puts. But the puts and call, that's what the call feature means.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So on pages 9 and 10 of the booklet, we have the statement of cash flow analysis. And so on the left-hand side of the page of page 9, we have the district's assessed valuation growing at that growth rate of 1% per year. Then in light green, we have all the revenues that are generated from the district's $1.03 debt service fund levy. Then in light blue, we have those payments on the outstanding bonds, the 2014 and the 2017 refunding bonds. And then the two most important columns, the purple column, the balance in the debt service account, that's the amount you retain after you make your payments on those outstanding bonds each year. And then in dark blue, we have the payments on those two bond issues totaled. And we've isolated those two columns, the balances in the debt service account, the total fiscal year debt service payments on page 11. And to make it even easier to see, we've graphed page 11, those balances on the bar graph in the PowerPoint. And so those blue bars are the balances after your payments are made each year. The red are those total payments. And so we can see those balances exceed the payments, and they really begin to take off as we go forward the next several years. And those blue bars being so strong and higher than your upcoming payments is what signals that the district's in a very strong position for a no tax increase bond issue. And as Larry mentioned, the bonds would be repaid with that $3 debt service fund levy, but they would extend the payments from 2027 to 2039. So it would be a 12-year extension of that $3 debt service fund levy, but it would not increase. So overall, it's a very healthy situation, and that difference between where the blue bars really start to exceed the red bars is where we're in a position to add new debt under that $3 debt service fund levy. And as Larry mentioned, if we didn't issue any new bonds, and we've got some calculations that the state auditor for the Form C, we would use those call features going forward March 1st, 2022 and March 1st, 2024 to make prepayment. So we would take some of the red bar from one of the future years and then move it up to the current year as a prepayment to save interest expense to be able to maintain that $3 debt service fund levy.
So this where we are at this point, if you can picture it another way, is if you've gone to the doctor for a physical exam, only in this case we're doing a physical on the debt service. And we're looking forward to what you've got. And the state auditor will not allow you to have balances this large that are on here. So what we do with the Form C calculations, the assistance we provide, and is what Brad just mentioned, that if you're not pursuing new debt and you want to keep the levy the same, then we would set up an escrow account to prepay some of your bonds in 2022. And then that would allow you to keep the $3 levy while you waited to get in position for the election. The $10 million issue that we're talking about is not the limit of what you could do, and the reason we're stretching it out for 20 years is, and this would be part of our learning your overall needs when we get in a moment. When we get to 2026, because all of your other debt is nearly gone, and this new debt won't take up as much room, but in 2026 or thereabouts, you could do 20 million more without a tax increase, having already done the 10 million of right now. So if the 10 million that we're discussing is going to meet needs like roof repairs, heating, ventilation, air conditioning needs that you might have, any pavement needs or other types of less glamorous improvements but are also necessary, and they get more costly as you defer them, that could be handled pretty easily with that. You also have a lease that is callable in 22. We'll show you that in a moment. That takes about $292,000 a year of your operating money. I see Kathy's nodding her head on that. The bond issue, the $10 million, could have $2 million set aside to pay that lease off early in 22. That would then give you another close to $300,000 a year that you're presently paying on lease payments that you could be using for other educational needs for the remaining 8 years of that lease. It goes out to 2030. He'll show you that in a moment. So we're just trying to give you a picture, because we don't know all of your long-range plans, but I think once you realize, well, we can take care of these things now with this amount of money, and it doesn't have to be the full 10 million. But if we do 10 million, we've structured it initially to go out for 20 years, because that would make room for a major project in between there. And if you don't need that major project, with our 5-year call feature, this 20-year financing can be reduced to probably 15, 14 years.
I had a question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think I've got this right. Kathy, you can probably help me. This debt service fund is not touchable, right? It has to be, it's one of those things where it has to go to debt service. So if we don't have any debt, then we can't collect the levy.
Right.
So the idea is that we need to have debt in order to keep getting the money, so that we've got money coming in for stuff that happens in the future.
That's one idea. Yes.
Okay.
Another is we do a rollback.
Most schools in the state, because the way facilities deteriorate over time and new improvements are needed, it's pretty much an ongoing. There's an ongoing need to build maybe a new elementary here, or a new high school or middle school, or if they don't need new facilities, there's frequently, after 15, 20 years, an existing building might need a better library or a better kitchen, cafeteria, those types of things. So it's to your advantage, we think, to not let the levy go to zero. If it's going to go to zero and you don't have any needs whatsoever, but you do have operating needs, then we can look at a no tax increase levy transfer. Or maybe reduce the debt service levy some, transfer 50 cents, keep 63 cents in the debt service fund. If depends on what the circumstances are, but there are a lot of ways to analyze it and to come up with ideas. Why don't you show them their lease, Brad, and we'll come right back to how the 10 million would overlap with this. Is this helpful, the way you have any? Well, okay.
The lease is on pages 27 and 28 of the booklet. And so those lease payments, interest rates of 2%, then 3% the rest of the way down. the average interest rate is 2.97%. And as Larry mentioned, the payments on that lease, if we look at fiscal total on page 27 on the right-hand side of the page, the total principal and interest payments each year are about $295,000 per year of operating funds that have to be earmarked for appropriation to those lease payments. And the next page, on page 28, is the debt service to maturity and call report, which depicts the call feature of April 1st, 2022. $2,285,000 of principals outstanding, but then we have a principal payment of $225,000 that year. So it's just a little over $2 million of principal that we'll be able to prepay on April 1st, 2022. So $2 million of any bond issue could be set aside to pay off this lease financing on that call date of April 1st, 2022 in order to save that approximate $290,000 of operating funds for the district's budget, which would be very helpful.
What is it that we're leasing?
We're not. That was the energy lease that they went into in 2007. Monies were dedicated from one of our pilots, our payment in lieu of taxes, to actually pay that payment every month. So we get about $325,000 a year to pay that payment. It's going to be a little short. I mean, the lease purchase schedule runs out a couple of years more than the pilot does, but that is how that was all set up originally.
Is that the distribution center?
Yes.
Now, if we translate the $295,000 based on a projected future assessed valuation of $218 million, that freed up money is equivalent to about a 14-cent levy increase that you don't have to make. You don't have to ask for. It's about that much additional revenue you have available for your overall school program. So it's something that the bond issue we're discussing, if you didn't have $10 million of current needs, there's $2 million that will help you in the operating side, and maybe you would have $8 million of needs, maybe not that much. Again, that's part of what you'll determine, and Mr. Menching probably already has some ideas on what needs you might have. But that's what we're trying to do is explain to you what you can do in the near term with a no tax increase measure.
Kathy, those pilot funds go into which account?
Fund 4, which is where the lease purchase is paid out.
Purchases are all paid out of Fund 4.
And you would still get those if the lease was paid off. You would just have more money to work with. So you may not want to pay the lease off, or you may have other needs, but we just wanted to throw that into the mix as a possible activity that could happen with the bond sale.
And Kathy, you said the revenue runs out before the
Yes.
payment, the
The
end of the
revenue,
payment
the
term?
pilot will be fulfilled in 2025. So I believe it runs till 2027, the amortization schedule.
I think it goes to 2030.
So it
So
must
you'd
be
have
27, I believe, and then,
Okay.
which would be 20 years, yes. So it went to 27, and then we added 3 years
okay.
to it. That's correct.
So if you paid it off early, it would be solved ahead of time. Plus, you'd have extra revenue. Let's look at what that's your Form C calculation. Go through that, and then we'll show them the $10 million of new money.
Okay. So based on the strength of those balances, we went ahead and looked at this past year's Form C calculation. Each August when you set your tax levy, the state auditor requires this calculation that looks at your assessed valuation and then your upcoming next 2 years of payments. And so we factor that in with the state assessed revenues, and we can see in the bottom right-hand corner of the calculation for this past summer, the legal limit for your debt service fund levy based on your upcoming debt payments is $1.05, with a small rollback of just under 2 cents to the current $1.03 debt service fund levy. So we just barely were able to have enough debt payments coming up to preserve that levy at that level. Now, if we go forward to this summer's projected calculation, we can see that the debt service fund levy without any new debt based on the strength of those balances
That's page 7 in the PowerPoint.
Thank you.
goes from $1.03 down to 76 cents. And so, as Larry mentioned, the two ways to remedy this would be adding new debt. If we have the payments on new bonds, we'll be able to see how that impacts the calculation from a rollback to 76 cents to a levy that calculates to $1.22 with a 24-cent rollback to the current $1.03 level. Now, if the district didn't go forward with the new bonds to have new debt payments to justify the $1.03 levy, as Larry mentioned, we could do a prepayment, a defeasance, since the bonds aren't callable until 2022, of about $650,000 to $700,000. We would make a prepayment on the existing bonds to that effect to preserve this levy.
The term he's using is defeasance escrow. You would actually vote to do that as a board prior to your tax rate hearing in the summer of 2019. And then that would create an escrow account that would pay all the interest on $650,000 of your debt through March 1 of 22, and then it would prepay that much principal, and that escrow would be irrevocable and would be set up. So then the state auditor would respect that and allow you to keep the $1.03 levy. Otherwise, we have to look at reducing it, and if you have a project, then you got to raise the levy back up. So this is one of our services that's been very well received, and it's also helped a lot of schools stay ahead of their needs on capital facilities by keeping their levy constant. You've been doing that.
The escrow, can it go toward the lease?
You could set up an escrow to go towards the lease, but that would be operating money that you'd be depriving yourself of.
It's not debt service, not Fund 3.
I
Yeah,
thought we said it was in Fund 4.
the lease is in Fund 4.
But you're talking about defeasance in Fund 3.
The defeasance is in Fund 3
Oh,
of $650,000.
okay.
Then when you've set that money aside for that escrow, we change the, you have less money in the balance, so the state auditor says, okay, you can keep the levy you've got because you don't have as big a balance. You've already determined that we're going to prepay some debt in 2022.
Okay, I'm getting confused. So can we mix 3 and 4 funds?
No.
Okay, so how do we set aside an escrow from Fund 3?
Fund
to
3,
pay
it's
for-
Fund 3 money going to Fund 3. You're just spending, you're saying, we know we want to pay this debt off early in 22, so we're going to arrange right now and commit to it as a board. Then your payments will change out there, your balances will go down, and the levy, you can keep the $1.03 instead of having to go to 76 cents.
So you build up the fund in order to take it down.
Yes, we just switch around the payments. I mean,
I was getting confused
Yes,
as to how
4's out of the, we're not talking 4 right now.
we're not talking
Yeah.
4
Yes.
right now. Okay,
Now,
okay.
what you're saying, this adds more complexity, is if you do put $2 million of the $8 million to prepay the lease, we normally wouldn't sell those bonds till 2022 and use the money right away to pay the lease off. But if you are concerned that, well, what about what will rates do? Where will rates be in 22? We want to get the lowest rate we can for this $2 million. We would sell the $2 million and we would create an escrow then for Fund 4 from that $2 million of proceeds.
Because you think you'd get interest off the $2 million.
You will. You would get interest off of it. It can't be, we can't arbitrage it. You can't make a profit on it. But you could at least earn what you're paying on the $2 million if the market will provide it. It hasn't in the past, but it might now with the Fed raising rates. Yeah, but we would, the way we're envisioning this, because we don't know if you even want to prepay the lease at this point, but if you did, I just wanted to keep your Fund 3 and Fund 4 dialogue. There is a way they get tied together. Okay. So, let's go to the $10 million and your bonding capacity calculation. Brad.
So the district's legal bonding capacity is calculated on page 9 of the PowerPoint, 15 of the book. It's 15% of the district's assessed valuation, which is $211 million. It factors in those 2 bond issues that are already outstanding. So in the bottom right-hand corner, we can see the district's legal capacity is $20,336,000. We would only be using half of that with a proposed $10 million bond issue. So you'd have $10.3 million remaining going forward. And then we have that new $10 million bond issue graph where we can see the impact on the district's debt service balances when we add those new payments on the $10 million Series 2019 bonds. And this ties back with that state auditor Form C calculation. When we add the new payments, those red bars increase to approximate the balances in the debt service account. And so with that bond issue and that debt added, your debt service levy calculates to well over $1.20, which justifies the $1.03 debt service fund levy.
Oh, now we're going to the how to structure the 10 million, and and Brad and I, in discussing it, we said let's see what they can do when their old debt's paid off, having added this new 10 million, assuming that you would want to have that door open in case you had major needs. So look what happens here in 27, 28, those blue bars again. And all that's out here, this is the 10 million that's voted in April. And it doesn't have any principal on it starting until about that time. Now, if you said, well, we don't need anything out here, and you're positive of that, then we could shorten it up and save money and make the red bars here bigger so they'd be paid off faster. But with the call feature on the 10 million, you wouldn't have to make that decision now. You could have the flexibility with the 10 million, and then when you get further down the road, maybe if you need a major project, you can do 20 million, maybe more, depending on interest rates at the time and what your AV, assessed valuation growth is. But if you don't need it, you can use the call feature to shorten up the first 10 million. If you start with a shorter debt, then you don't have as much flexibility. So those are things we would interject into the planning process. We thought this might be of interest to do it this way to start out. Do you have any questions about the structure, the potential structure of the 10 million? Where is that in the book, Brad?
It's page 21's the spreadsheet, and it's right before that.
We'll talk about the premium maybe.
That's still using, I guess it says up top 1%.
Yes.
That's 1%. We've been averaging roughly 3.
Yeah, 3. So this is, hopefully we're understating everything. You maybe could do 22 million in 26 or 27 instead of 20. And maybe you could pay it off a whole lot faster. But if we lock into an aggressive assumption of growth and it doesn't happen, then it becomes we have to look at levy adjustments, and that's not as fun. Don't like to come to those meetings.
Yeah.
But we do. We have been. We had to do that several times during the financial crisis when people their levies weren't adequate in some cases. Had to make adjustments.
A sample copy of that debt service schedule for the $10 million bond issue is on pages 16 and 17. As we noted, the principal payments on that $10 million do not commence until the existing bonds are paid off. So the principal payments are 2028 through 2039. So that's the extension of 12 years with that $10 million structured as a 20-year financing, and the principal payments starting after the existing bonds are paid off, extending that $1.03 tax levy from 2027 to 2039. We've assumed a premium sale on the $10 million bonds, and the details of the premium sale are on page 17. you'll notice the third column in from the left-hand side of the page is the coupon rate, which agrees to the debt service schedule on page 16. 4% for the first several years, and then 5%. Then the fourth column in from the left-hand side of the page, the yield is calculated to the 5-year call date, and it's less than the coupon. And so we have the maturity value to the right of the yield column, and then the price. The price we notice is over 100%, and that's where those bonds are sold at the premium. And then we can compare that to the dollar price column, the first column on the far right-hand side of the page. The difference between the dollar price column and the maturity value column is the amount of premium the investor is paying to the district.
And this is here primarily not to add a lot of complexity and confusion, but let's say once you get your projects together, you need 11 or 12 million instead of 10. That's more frequently what we're facing with issues that are coming up and the ones that passed this last spring, is that the bids are coming in higher than the architect thought they would. So we give the issuer the chance to sell some of the bonds at premiums in order to get more of the project that was presented accomplished, but if you don't need the premium, then we can sell them at the lower rates. And usually when a bond issue passes, we're not rushing right away to sell it. We like to see what are the bids on the construction, and then set the financing up to adjust to that reality. So if you need premiums, we do it premiums. If you don't need them, then we don't. So, but this one here would probably be where you don't pay off the lease early, that you have what you think are $10 million of needs, and when you take your bid, you find out you need $1 million more. This will get about $800,000, about $800,000 of premium, and these yields to the call are higher than what I could sell them for today. So we're assuming the market's going to move further higher with the Federal Reserve adjusting the rates like they're predicted to do next year. So that's pretty much what the 10 million would look like. We don't have the 20 million in here, do we?
No, that's just.
We just wanted you to know you could do 20 million if you needed it in 2026 or thereabouts. We passed out the election handouts. Would you like to go through those, Wesley?
The election handouts is
Brad, will you go ahead and distribute this on the sample ballot?
if you look back to Harrisonville's historical election returns, you can see on April 3rd, 2007, it has each precinct on there and then how many people voted for it and against it. The bottom right-hand corner is 23%. 23% of those registered voters voted in that election, and your bond issue passed with 75%. So you had 437 surplus votes during that election.
I would point out when you read the ballot, it doesn't say no tax increase. We were prohibited by law at that time from saying that. And then the legislature, they passed a law probably about 2010 or 11 that said you have to tell the voters how much taxes are going to go up for the debt service levy when you put a bond on the ballot. Well, okay, but if they're not going up, we can say that too, and that's where it says we estimate we're going to keep the levy the same. Brad's passing out a sample ballot that illustrates that. I would ask a question. How many of you remember the 07 election? You know, that was pretty popular, it seemed like. You got a real 3/4%, 75% yes. The 23% is typical. That's what we see between 20 and 25% turnout in most districts when there's a bond issue on the April ballot. Sometimes if there's no bond issue and it's just school board election, that turnout drops to 15, 16%. It varies from community to community and who's the candidates are and all of those things. But your turnout was typical, and this 10 million we're discussing is maybe not as glamorous as what the project was at that time, unless there is a need for some new construction that would come within that 10 million. But we're presuming it's more of a remodeling and repairing, maybe an addition here and there is what we're gathering without having had the chance to visit with you in more detail.
Wesley, can I ask a question? What did we need percentage-wise to pass that? We got 75. Was it
4/7.
4/7?
57.122 roughly.
And then the other election is from April of 2002, and it was for $9 million, and you see that was a little over 17% participation rate, and it passed with almost 61%, so not quite as good as the 75%, but still had surplus votes of 61 votes. The draft ballots we gave you are on one sheet. Again, this is if you have the needs, and we're kind of guessing what we put in here was safety and security, roofs, HVAC. That has been pretty typical of a lot of the bond issues in the last year or two. A lot of facilities are older and they're having to repair, and then energy efficiency improvements, lighting, and then any kind of miscellaneous remodeling and repair. You can kind of always have that statement in there in case something else comes up, or minor things that you can't list every single thing on the ballot. But you can see in the very first sentence, in the red, it says without an estimated increase in the current debt service. And then it's the $10 million proposal. And then at the very bottom paragraph, it also reiterates that the levy will remain unchanged at the $1.03 estimated amount. The bottom one is almost identical, but we put some blanks in there in case there's something, that's where you can insert if you wanted to pay off your lease purchase to free up some operating funds, or if you had some kind of new construction or something other major that you wanted to put in there. So like I said, this is completely draft. It can be changed. Everything in it can be taken out, and you put whole new stuff in everything, depending on what your district and your committees come up with, what their actual needs are.
About the filing.
Yeah, the filing deadline is January 22nd, so about 2 months if you wanted to do this. You have to make a decision on it. That's sufficient time if you have the needs. I mean, because again, you can look if facilities have been neglected and you have needs that you know of. I mean, they're going to probably be fairly well supported by your staff because they work in the buildings every day and they know what you need, know how important it is. The final one is a suggested for successful campaign committees. It gives a lot of information, and what we typically tell districts is there's a lot in here, so what you would do is pick out the things that you think would be successful in Harrisonville. So it starts from registering the committee to filing the campaign reports, social media, how it's been very successful, especially lately. As far as when we did one in Pleasant Hill last year, we spent very little money on anything because we use so much social media. We had pamphlets and signs, but not as much as we did 10 years ago because social media pretty much ran the campaign. Different things about staff information, speakers bureau, elections, advertising, media relations, the public forums, just all kinds of things in here for suggestions. And then the back has subcommittees, and you can, again, create the ones you need and eliminate any if you don't need them. So I say this is strictly what's been successful in the past at different districts. I'll leave anything out, Larry?
You did well. We help with the election as much as you need us to. As you can see, drafting the ballots, drafting the news release maybe to announce to the public. What we would suggest as a typical place to start from where we are today with Harrisonville is that you would assemble your staff, your principals, and some people from the community that you would want to serve on your facilities review, and maybe use that group to help you prioritize what you want to take care of with the potential bond issue, and then have that group make a report to the board of their priorities. Board members could be also in that group along with administrators participating in the group, but you would have people from the community that you think have high visibility, favorable knowledge. The one that you passed in 2007, I didn't work on that. I would assume, though, that you had a committee of some sort helping with that because you had such a high approval margin there.
Hollis and Miller, right? I believe.
Was Hollis and Miller your architects? So,
As far as I've done.
Yeah.
yeah. And the architects can be involved in.
Yeah, once you get architects on board, they help with the pamphlets and things. They're very
Sure.
helpful with some of the distribution of materials and creation of materials. So.
And we can attend public forums and explain the financing part if you need that help. One thing that we would do initially is try to get a list of your registered voters from the county clerk, and they've been very cooperative. They turned us around quickly that we brought with us. Who voted in 2007 and who actually voted in 2002. We won't know how they voted, but that'll be on the data sheet, so your campaign leaders who are working it will know, well, 75% of these folks who voted in 2007 were for what we were doing. They might be predisposed to be supporters of what we're going to ask for now. So it can make the campaign more efficient in terms of being sure you you distribute information to those who vote. And in many cases, less than half of the parents are registered. And like you see, you had 23% participate. So there's not too many folks out in the community who actually put a yes or no on the ballot, unless it's pretty controversial, and that'll go up. Well, we would say don't make any changes in the football coach or basketball coach. Those things right before the election, they sometimes get. Some of the ones we failed that were no tax increase, it had nothing to do with the project. They were mad about something else, and once that got done, then they came back and passed it later. But we've thrown a lot of data towards you. We appreciate the questions that you have asked, and we're eager to listen to anything else you might want to offer. We don't have any more handouts or PowerPoints.
So, Larry, let's say we don't want to move and put this in April, and we know that levy's going to have to be either rolled back, or the vote's going to have to, or the board's going to have to say we're going to put that in escrow. Let's say the board says, okay, we're going to put that in escrow. We're going to prepay those bonds. Does that mean that takes off the no tax increase off the table for?
It takes it off for April of 19.
Okay.
But that's a very good point you're raising. It's $12 million in 2020, based on same type of assumptions.
So
Now,
you couldn't do a November election?
Sure you can.
in an odd year, a November election is a 2/3 vote.
Yeah.
So in the odd years, the April is the only 4/7 vote. But in 2020, you would have April, August, and November that could all be 4/7. But in 2020, it'll be the presidential election. You'll have a real high turnout. Sometimes you don't want that. Other times it's helpful. In the suburban areas, sometimes it's helpful to have it during a high turnout election. But
Are the June elections off the table now?
They've taken those away, sir.
Okay.
And February is available for GO bonds only, but you have a 2/3 vote there too. So typically April is the best month. When we say 12 million might be better than 10, remember interest rates are likely to be higher, and remember the cost of what you're going to do. If the economy is still thriving, inflation's going to make those costs higher. So, but you're starting, and you get, if you say we just can't get ready for April of 19, then prepay some bonds. You can have a bigger project. Maybe you have 10 million of facilities needs and 2 million to prepay the lease with that 12. Number of things to go at it. And we wanted to do our best to give you confidence that if you wanted to go ahead, you got enough support there to give it a try. But if you're not, you have a backup plan to stay in position to try at a later time.
Do you find that technology infrastructure, it makes it a more popular issue? Does that, since it's actually going to help the kids more than maybe HVAC or?
Yes, we do find the technology, but what they started off with, what's really big right now is early childhood and security.
Safety and security.
The people are worried about these people coming in the buildings and creating stress. So making a better, lot safer entry systems. You may have done some of that already, but that's very popular. With the technology program, can be part of the bond issue. When we're talking about not starting principal till 27, usually technology has a turnover in lifestyle. But that would be an excellent way to deploy the $300,000 that could be freed up, and you could just have an ongoing renewal of technology using that money. As for example, some have done things like that. Yeah.
We just know we're going to have some infrastructure, big infrastructure needs.
Well, for the technology, the infrastructure is, you're going to need that for a long time. So that would be an appropriate, I think, a very appropriate piece of the total project.
Do you see elementary playground equipment being a positive in there too, or?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And when you get spread out projects where it helps every building and every grade level, that also gets more people involved and excited about it.
And it helps for the faculty to know what you're planning on doing to get them involved, and to support people, bus drivers and maintenance people too.
So it could go to salaries, just like Ray Peck did, or no?
No,
That was
Not
a
bonds.
levy increase.
No.
Yeah,
No, that's a different one.
it's a different animal.
Okay.
They did a levy increase, I believe, didn't
They
they?
did
Yeah.
both. They did two components of it. They did a levy increase and a bond. So
Okay.
You've asked a lot of good questions. We appreciate getting to meet with you, and look forward to working with you down the road, whatever you decide.
Thank you for all your overwhelming information.
And we don't charge any fees. They've been disclosed in our draft agreement, but that all assumes that the election's successful and bonds are sold. If there's an unsuccessful election, we don't bill for this type of work that we do in advance. And the Form C calculations, that's a part of ongoing service as well. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you very much.
No,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
pretty smart guys.
Good.